Hi, I'm McCoy-Ward, and in today's video we're going to be looking and understanding while the crops, this is hundreds of thousands of tons of crops from fruit to vegetables, are just being allowed to rot in the fields, whilst at the same time supermarket shelves in a number of locations are running dry, they're running empty of these much needed food supplies.
On this one farm, there are 750,000 unpicked courgettes, 150 tons worth of vegetables that have simply been left to rot. That's because they can't get the staff. And if this continues, it will force farms like this one to make difficult decisions about their future.
Did you suspect that this might happen?
I think that we thought that there was a possibility, but what we didn't see was how extreme it would be. I think it's the extremities of the reaction of people to it. I think that's what has taken the business by surprise.
As economies around the globe begin their journey on the long road to recovery, a number of industries, in particular in the food industry, is left scratching their head and asking, why are we still having all of these supply chain breakdowns and issues? Why are supermarket shelves empty? And also, why are we suffering the phenomenon known as shrinkflation? This is where the packaging is the exact same size, everything looks identical, but the product inside has shrunk by as much as 50% in some instances. In today's video, we're going to focus on just that. Why are there so many problems from farm to processing to packaging, delivery, and then finally getting stocked on your local supermarket shelf? Now, no country in the Western, so I'm talking about the developed world right now, is suffering this worse than the United Kingdom. And this is for a number of reasons which don't apply to some of the other countries. Number one is the worker shortage from Brexit. So these are the Eastern European, mainly workers that would come in, who are now no longer coming in. Number two is, of course, the Pingdemic, which is a very interesting subject. Especially if you're not in the UK, you probably won't have heard of the Pingdemic. And number three is the truck driver shortage due to, again, Brexit and also the COVID crisis where a lot have gone home. So we're going to get into all of this and break all of this down. Welcome to the show. If you get your news from alternative places like I do, you'll know that there's a lot of talk at the moment of food shortages and shelves being empty, especially in holiday destinations. Now, the mainstream media are not covering any of this. I haven't seen it on any mainstream platform, any news outlet. I haven't seen it in any newspapers or anything like this. But if you go onto sites such as Facebook and Twitter, which I don't use a lot, but they are useful for some things, you will notice that a lot of holiday makers are posting photographs of large supermarkets that are just empty, mainly in the fresh produce section. The vegetables, the fruits, they are just empty. Now, if you step outside of the UK and you look at the EU, European Union main news outlets, they are making all these stories up at the moment and saying the UK, has got their just rewards for, voting for Brexit, and now they've got no food, they've got no workers, they've got no immigration, and that the economy is going to just collapse. This is what a lot of these EU mainstream news outlets are saying. But is this strictly true? Well, if you listen to the UK mainstream media, they're not talking about the food shortages, but they are talking about the staff shortages. And they are saying that this is just a temporary blip, everything's going to be fine in a couple of months, all the workers are going to come back, etc. Personally, I think they're both, distorting the truth a little bit. I don't think either of those are true. I definitely do not think that all of the European workers are going to be coming back anytime soon. And if you look at where we are now in August, this is the prime picking season for many crops. So I don't think this solution is going to be ended this year. I covered in last week's video how different sectors have been absolutely decimated, from bars to restaurants, cafes. The hospitality sector in general has just been decimated in the last 18 months. Now, the UK's worker shortage is far more severe than other nations, with 70% of employers saying they simply cannot hire for the sort of work they're doing. Now, a lot of this is known as low-skilled work. I don't quite agree with this terminology, but this is where someone is required to go to college, do some sort of a vocational training. That could be someone that works with their hands, it could be some sort of engineering. I definitely don't see how they call this unskilled work personally, but that is their definition of it. And they're saying that because many of the colleges and all the vocational trainings were closed last year, this has caused a huge backlog with a lot of people simply not coming in that would have this year, on top of all the people that left all the different industries last year. So this has only compounded the problem. Now, if we look at the sectors worst hit by this, it says that it is manufacturing, construction, hospitality, logistics, distribution, health and social care, and agriculture. Hi, if you're getting value from this video so far, can you do me a quick favor? Just click the like button, why not subscribe, and leave me a comment. I love to read your comments and see what you think. UK employers are also saying that the bottlenecks are being caused by added complications as fewer EU workers are being permitted to travel into Britain via all the COVID regulations and quarantining. If you think about the quarantine in the UK, if you're coming from a red country, no one is going to pay this. You know, just a couple, so a husband and wife, for example, and their kids, if they were coming in, the cost alone could be £10,000 just to get through the hotel quarantine. I mean, this is just, not going to happen. Why would someone go from their country? How much of their salary just on the quarantine alone? And they're saying that because of this, they can no longer rely on overseas workers to plug the employment gaps. Now, the problem with this is that 90 to 95% of some of the agriculture and the packaging plants are made up of European workers. So this is causing a huge problem. And it's not just the business sector, you also have the British Chamber of Commerce, you have the Federation of Small Businesses. They are all raising the alarm right now on this labour shortage, and they are calling on the government to do more about it. Many organisations are pointing the finger and saying the government is really doing almost nothing about these labour shortages, and they are not lifting any of the regulations to allow these workers to come in. And some are even claiming that there could be a complete collapse of the food chain supply system if things don't change within the next year. Now, I think that's a little alarmist myself, because really, if you think of supply and demand, what I think will happen personally is not a collapse of the food system, but they will simply start importing it from overseas. Crops will come from other European nations as well as elsewhere in the world.
British supermarkets will look to the EU to fill their empty shelves.
And of course, you now have to factor in the transport costs and the import duties. All of this will simply push up the price of food in the long run. We're already seeing inflation just ravishing through the economy. And this isn't just the UK, we're talking about the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. All the developing nations are being ravaged by inflation. Now you look at the developing nations, so these are not your Western nations. The inflation on food in the last year has been absolutely devastating. Some nations up 300%. So you think how bad it is right now with food inflation, what it is, double digits. Imagine having food inflation at 300% right now. So this leads me on to the first problem area, which is agriculture. So it's stated here that EU workers that usually come to the UK to carry out jobs such as livestock and crop picking and packaging as well, now struggle to meet the criteria required under the government's new point-based system. Farmers across the UK are in panic mode right now, as this is the busiest season of the year. It's just started, but they're faced with a shortage of 95% of vegetables and fruit pickers to actually pick and package this season's crop. 95%. Can you imagine this?
0.6% of seasonal agricultural workers in the UK are British, 0.6%. Almost everyone else is Eastern European. And what would you say then to the politicians in Britain who are making those decisions?
I hope they make the right decision and let us come back to work here.
Without staff, we don't harvest the crops. If we can't harvest the crops, we're going to stop planting the crops. That means that business disappears, and that means those crops disappear from the supermarket shelves. So it's pretty straightforward, I think.
And this isn't all. Now you have the delivery problem as well. So the haulage industry is calling this a national crisis. Most HGV drivers, which stands for heavy goods vehicles, were also Eastern European. And during the crisis over the last year and a half, the majority of them, almost all, have gone back to their home countries and are now finding it almost impossible or extremely difficult to get back to the UK to do their job again. So most have already taken up new positions in their home countries and do not expect to return to the UK again. Now, if you think about the UK, for example, 90 to 95% of all goods are transported by HGV trucks, so heavy good vehicles. These drivers, again, mainly Eastern European. Now, you also have to think about the demographics and the age. Now, the average age is around 55 years old for HGV drivers in the UK. Now, a lot of people are not coming into this industry. It's not as desirable as it once was a long time ago. And even with wages being pushed up and sign-on bonuses and all sorts of things, even if this was to work, the industry is saying the problem now is at a governmental level, with the testing centres simply not letting people do the training and the tests due to the COVID lockdowns. They're saying it is a health risk. So last year alone, they're claiming that 25,000 drivers that should have come through actually didn't get through. The backlog is now getting bigger and bigger. And a lot of those people that were on the waiting list have simply gone into other industries such as construction and other industries like this. Now this has caused an even bigger bottleneck, and they do not think this is going to be resolved for at least 3, possibly even 4 years before catch-up comes along. Now, I have another theory on this. I agree with what was just stated there, but I also think if you look at the advent of AI and automated driving, now automated trucks have been tested now for at least 5 years, if not 7 or 8 years. So I think just when the sector might start to recover, a lot of those jobs will be taken over by driverless vehicles, AI and other software. Again, we can talk about the picking as well. I think, again, robots will probably come in to start doing picking, packaging. You just look at Amazon, some of these big fulfillment centers, robots are doing packaging. This actually could be a very negative situation with all the lockdowns has now caused another crisis, and that is the crisis of the advent of increasing the speed of AI and production. Because where this was gradually coming in, a lot of companies now are saying, look, I can't go bankrupt. What other choices do I have? Let's get in AI, let's get in robots and other things like that to replace the workers. So I think this has only accelerated a crisis that was going to be coming anyway, and now will be coming a lot quicker. Just my personal opinion. The other thing contributing to this lack of workers right now in the HGV field, the transport field, is that you have to think many of these truck drivers were working overtime for the last year and a half to make up for many of the other drivers that were off sick or simply were too afraid to work. Now all of these drivers now it's summertime are saying, look, I need a break, I need to take a holiday, I need to take a week or 2 off, go to the coast, go to the beach, something like that, and actually have a break. So this is also contributing to the bottleneck that we're seeing. And for those of you fast food lovers out there, even Colonel Sanders this week rang the alarm bell and said that you may not be able to get some of your favorite chicken when you go to your local restaurant due to shortages. But if all of this wasn't enough, there is also one other crisis affecting the UK, which is a pretty crazy one, I've got to admit, and that is the Pingdemic. No, not pandemic, Pingdemic. Not sure what that is? Let me explain. A record number of citizens in the UK, and we're talking huge numbers, who had downloaded the NHS, so the National Health Service app for coronavirus, were being pinged at all sorts of strange times of day with warnings that they may need to self-isolate, and they had come into contact with people who had tested positive for COVID. So many were told to self-isolate for 10 days, yet again. Now, the app actually uses Bluetooth technology. So this is where it gets a little bit weird. One of my neighbors told me that she was pinged because one of her neighbors tested positive. So somehow, I don't know how, but the app thought that the virus could have gone through 2 brick walls to get to her house. So she was told to self-isolate. A little bit unusual, but this is, what the app was doing. So you may think that's strange. What about this one? A man was in the supermarket last week and he was pinged and told to self-isolate. Why? Because someone else that had been in that supermarket in the few days prior had tested positive for COVID. Now, you've got to think about this logistically. How many people go into a supermarket on a day-to-day basis? It's thousands. Some of the big ones, it's tens of thousands. Now, if just one person tests positive and they've been in there on that one day, how many days are you going back? Are you going back a week? Are you going back a few days? That could be a huge amount of people that are now being pinged and told to self-isolate. Now, here's the knock-on effect. What if you were one of those people that was in the supermarket and you got pinged? And now you're thinking, well, that was a few days ago. I've been to see my mother, my brother, my sister. I went to school. I went to this place. I went to that place. Now, what happens? Do all those people get pinged as well? You can see the impact this is having. What about the people going for a walk in the park or walk down down a path, and they pass someone and the Bluetooth picks up that you've passed someone that's tested positive? Ping, there you go again. So this pingdemic has been absolutely devastating on the UK economy, especially for workers. You hear stories all the time. One of my friends works in a school. She's a teacher, and she said that she's been at home more than she's been at school teaching at the moment because someone from her class gets pinged, or someone from another class who was, playing with these kids, and now she's been told to self-isolate. This is just a nightmare situation for the UK economy. So at the start, I said I would explain why all this food is rotting in the fields, why we're having shrinkflation in packaging. Well, here's the reason why. Let's summarize. The workers are just not there because they are back in their home countries. Some farms are down 95% on staff. And even if they could get the staff, they're being pinged and told to self-isolate. The packagers are just not there either because they are also from European countries. The heavy goods vehicle delivery drivers are short-staffed. They can't even get through training. A lot of them are back in their home country. And now in the supermarkets, all the staff are being pinged from the pingdemic and told to stay at home. Is it any wonder that the food is rotting in the fields and we're getting food imported from other countries right now? This is a crazy situation. And personally, I don't see how the media and the government can keep putting out all these positive spin stories about how the economy is booming and how we're growing and all of this sort of stuff. Think about this logically. Just use some common sense here for 1 second. How could the economy be doing better now than it was last year or even 2019? Let's use that example. How could the economy be growing at a rapid rate for, the fastest in X amount of years when you look at how it was in 2019 and we were very stable, very steady, and you look now with all the closures and the business collapses and all the currency printing out of thin air. Think about this logically. It just doesn't make sense. Sometimes you've got to use common sense with these things and stop looking at the mainstream media and their statistics. Just look and apply common sense and you'll see the truth for yourself. Thank you so much for watching today. Please click the like button if you haven't already. Consider subscribing and comment below. What do you think of what's going on right now? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, take care. God bless. See you soon.